The world ended not with a bang, but with a spore. A mutated cordyceps fungus, originating from South American crops, found its way into human hosts. The infection was merciless. It consumed the brain, turning people into mindless runners who attacked anyone in their path. Within days, civilization began to crumble. The Federal Disaster Response Agency seized control of the United States, establishing a military dictatorship. Cities were quarantined. Families were torn apart. In the chaos, humanity's darkest and brightest moments would emerge. Sarah's last night, September 27, 2013. Joel Miller was an ordinary single father living in Austin, Texas, with his 12-year-old daughter Sarah and his brother Tommy. On the night of his birthday, Joel returned home exhausted from work. Sarah had stayed up to give him his birthday present, a watch she'd saved up for months to buy. That night, Joel received frantic calls about strange incidents downtown. Explosions echoed in the distance. When Sarah woke to an empty house and the neighbor's dog whimpering at the door, she knew something was terribly wrong. The neighbor, their sweet elderly friend, lunged at her with inhuman speed and clouded eyes. Tommy burst in just in time, and the three fled into the night as Austin descended into hell.
The roads were clogged with panicked evacuees. Joel drove desperately through the chaos while Tommy rode shotgun, rifle ready. Sarah sat in the back, clutching her father's watch, her eyes wide with terror at the screaming infected that threw themselves at passing cars. A collision forced them to abandon the vehicle. Joel carried Sarah as they ran through the chaos, but Fedra soldiers had established a perimeter. When a soldier received orders to fire on civilians to prevent the spread, he aimed his rifle at the fleeing family. The shot rang out. Sarah crumpled in her father's arms, blood blooming across her shirt. Joel held her as the life drained from her eyes, her final breath, a whisper of, "Daddy." Something inside Joel died that night too, something he would never fully recover.
2 decades passed. The world had become unrecognizable. Quarantine zones operated under Fedra's iron fist, while outside the walls the infected roamed freely. Survivors turned on each other for scraps. Joel had transformed from a loving father into a hardened smuggler in the Boston QZ, working alongside his partner Tess. Joel's heart had calcified. He'd done terrible things to survive, things that would haunt most people, but which Joel justified as necessary. His brother Tommy had joined a resistance group called the Fireflies, believing in their mission to restore civilization and find a cure. Joel thought they were naive fools. In the ruins of the old world, hope was a luxury few could afford. In the Boston QZ, a 14-year-old girl named Ellie lived in a Fedra-run military boarding school. Her best friend Riley had been missing for weeks, and Ellie's heart ached with the absence. When Riley suddenly appeared at Ellie's window one night, she revealed her secret. She'd joined the Fireflies. But before leaving for good, Riley wanted one last adventure with Ellie. She led her to an abandoned shopping mall, a time capsule from before the outbreak. They explored the forgotten world together, trying on Halloween masks, reading old magazines, riding a carousel, and sharing their dreams. In a photo booth, their laughter turned to something deeper. They kissed, finally acknowledging what had always been between them. Their moment of joy was shattered when the music attracted a horde of infected. The infected swarmed from the shadows of the mall. Ellie and Riley fought desperately, but there were too many. In the chaos, both girls were bitten, the death sentence everyone feared. They sat together in the quiet aftermath, waiting for the inevitable transformation. Riley suggested they could lose their minds together, waiting out their last hours as themselves. They held hands as minutes turned to hours. But something impossible happened. Riley's eyes began to cloud. Her breathing changed. She was turning. But Ellie remained herself, unchanged. She was immune to the infection that had destroyed the world. Riley became a monster before Ellie's eyes, and Ellie was forced to end her best friend's life. She survived, but part of her wished she hadn't. The guilt of immunity would haunt her forever.
Marlene, leader of the Boston Fireflies, approached Joel and Tess with an unusual job: smuggle a teenage girl to a Firefly outpost just outside the QZ. The payment would be weapons, enough to make it worth the risk. The girl was Ellie, rebellious and sharp-tongued. She didn't know why she was so important to the Fireflies, and Joel and Tess didn't care. It was just another job in a world where survival meant not asking questions. As they prepared to leave the QZ under cover of darkness, Joel noticed Ellie's nervous energy. She tried to hide her fear with sarcasm and bravado. He remembered Sarah at that age, always trying to seem braver than she felt. He pushed the memory down. Feeling anything was dangerous in this world.
Their path out of the QZ took them through abandoned buildings and across treacherous rooftops. When a FedRegard scanner caught them, Ellie attacked before he could read her results. Joel killed the guard, but not before seeing the scanner flash positive for infection. Joel and Tess turned their guns on Ellie immediately. She raised her hands, then pulled up her sleeve to show an old bite mark. 3 weeks old. Impossible. Everyone turned within hours, days at most. "I'm immune," Ellie said quietly. "The Fireflies think they can use my blood to make a cure." Tess lowered her weapon, but Joel remained skeptical. In 20 years, he'd never heard of anyone immune. Still, if it was true, it changed everything. As they continued toward the rendezvous point, Tess was bitten by an infected, but hid the wound from the others.
The Massachusetts State House was supposed to be full of fireflies, ready to take Ellie to the next checkpoint. Instead, they found only corpses. Fedra had gotten there first, and soldiers were returning to sweep the area again. Tess finally revealed her bite. The infection was spreading fast. She could feel herself slipping away. With her remaining time, she could give Joel and Ellie a chance to escape. "This is my last trip," Tess said, pressing grenades and ammunition into Joel's hands. "Make it count. Get her to Tommy. Find the Fireflies." Joel hesitated, emotions warring on his face. Tess kissed him one last time, then pushed him toward Ellie. "Go." As Joel and Ellie fled, Tess faced the returning soldiers. She stood among scattered gasoline and ammunition, a lighter in her trembling hands. The soldiers' shots rang out as the building erupted in flames.
Joel decided their best bet was to reach his brother Tommy in Wyoming. Tommy had connections to the Fireflies and might know where they'd relocated. But first, they needed transportation. Bill was one of Joel's contacts, a paranoid survivalist who'd fortified the entire town of Lincoln. Bill had survived alone for years, using elaborate traps and his mechanical expertise. He was also deeply unpleasant, rude, and wanted nothing to do with Joel's problems. But when Joel mentioned he was traveling with someone important to the Fireflies, Bill grudgingly agreed to help. As they searched for a working battery, Ellie discovered evidence of Bill's late partner, Frank. Bill's gruff exterior cracked slightly as he spoke about the man he'd loved and lost. By the time they left with a working vehicle, Ellie had begun to understand that even in this brutal world, human connections still mattered, even if they ended in heartbreak. The journey to Wyoming meant crossing through dangerous territory. Pittsburgh had fallen to bandits,
desperate survivors who preyed on travelers. Joel should have seen the trap. A man lying in the road, calling for help. Classic ambush. Before Joel could reverse, hunters surrounded the vehicle, dragging them out. Joel fought with brutal efficiency, snapping necks and crushing windpipes. Ellie watched, horrified and fascinated by the violence Joel was capable of. They escaped into the city's ruins, but now they were on foot in hostile territory. As they navigated through abandoned buildings and across flooded streets, Joel began teaching Ellie to survive, how to move quietly, where to aim for a quick kill, how to trust no one. Ellie proved to be a quick learner, but Joel saw the toll it took, each lesson stealing a bit more of her innocence.
Trapped in Pittsburgh, Joel and Ellie encountered Henry and his younger brother Sam. Henry had been working with the hunters but betrayed them to protect Sam. Trapped in Pittsburgh, Joel and Ellie encountered Henry and his younger brother Sam. Henry had been working with the hunters but betrayed them to protect Sam. Now both brothers were hunted men. The four formed an uneasy alliance to escape the city. Sam was deaf and communicated through sign language with Henry. Despite the age difference, Ellie and Sam bonded quickly, their youthful resilience a contrast to the hardened adults. One night, Ellie confided in Sam about her greatest fear, ending up alone. Sam understood. He was terrified too, of the infected, of the world, of losing Henry. That night, Sam didn't tell anyone that he'd been bitten earlier that day. By morning, the infection had taken hold. Sam attacked Ellie before Henry shot his own brother. The gunshot still echoing, Henry turned the weapon on himself. Ellie and Joel buried them together. Neither spoke of the incident again, but it reinforced the lesson: attachment in this world only led to pain. By fall, Joel and Ellie finally reached Jackson, Wyoming. The settlement was a miracle, a functioning community with electricity, hot water, and actual families. Tommy had found something worth building, something worth protecting. Joel wanted to leave Ellie with Tommy. She'd be safer here, protected by walls and community. He'd fulfilled Tess's dying wish. His job was done. But Ellie saw through his excuses. She confronted him, her voice breaking. "Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone except for you. So don't tell me I would be safer with somebody else, because the truth is, I would just be more scared." Joel realized he'd been lying to himself. This wasn't about keeping Ellie safe. It was about keeping himself safe, from caring, from losing someone again, from the pain Sarah's death still caused him. But it was too late. Despite his best efforts, he'd begun to care about this sharp-tongued, brave, impossible girl. "Okay," he said quietly, "we finish this together." Tommy directed them to the University of Eastern Colorado, where the Fireflies had relocated. The campus was beautiful and eerie, nature reclaiming Gothic architecture. Ellie marveled at the remnants of the old world: lecture halls, laboratories, student life frozen in time. They found evidence the Fireflies had moved on to Salt Lake City, but before they could leave, bandits attacked. Joel fought viciously to protect Ellie, but during the escape, a raider drove a baseball bat with embedded nails deep into Joel's side. Joel collapsed, blood pouring from the wound. Ellie, terrified, managed to get him onto a horse. She rode through a blizzard with Joel fading in and out of consciousness, his blood staining the snow. For the first time, Ellie was truly alone, with the responsibility of keeping someone alive. She found an abandoned house and dragged Joel inside. He was dying, and there was nothing she could do but watch. For weeks, Ellie nursed Joel in the abandoned house, watching him battle infection and fever. She hunted for food, scavenged for medicine, and stood guard against infected and humans alike. She was 15 years old and utterly alone. While hunting deer, she encountered David and James, who offered to trade medicine for food.
David was charismatic, claiming to be a teacher who protected his community. Ellie, desperate to save Joel, agreed. But David had recognized her description. His group were the bandits from the university. He'd been tracking the pair who'd killed so many of his people. When Ellie returned for the medicine, David captured her, revealing his true nature. David's community was surviving through cannibalism. He was a predator in every sense, and he'd decided Ellie would either join them or become their next meal. He spoke of her potential, his eyes hungry for more than just food. Ellie managed to escape her cage and kill James, but David pursued her through the burning restaurant. She was exhausted, injured, and terrified. David was stronger, faster, and enjoyed the hunt. He cornered her, pinning her down. His hands closed around her throat as he whispered about how special she was, how they could rule together. Ellie's vision darkened. She was going to die. Her hand found a machete. She brought it down again, and again, and again. Even after David was dead, she couldn't stop. Tears streamed down her face as she hacked at his corpse, releasing all her terror, rage, and trauma. Joel, finally recovered enough to move, found her covered in blood, still swinging. He pulled her away, holding her as she sobbed. "It's okay, baby girl. It's okay." Something had broken inside Ellie that day. The innocence Joel had tried to preserve was gone. She'd become a survivor, and the cost was measured in pieces of her soul. By spring, they reached Salt Lake City and the Firefly base at the hospital. Traveling through the flooded lower levels, Ellie's inability to swim nearly killed her when they were caught in a current. Joel rescued her, but both ended up unconscious on the shore. When Joel awoke, Marlene told him the truth. The cordyceps had grown with Ellie since she was born. To extract it for a vaccine, they'd have to remove it from her brain. The procedure would kill her. Marlene explained that Ellie was already unconscious and in surgery. She'd never know. She'd never feel anything. One life for the potential cure to save humanity? Wasn't that a worthy trade? Joel's response was simple: find someone else. But there was no one else. Ellie was unique. This was humanity's best chance for salvation. Marlene gave the order to escort Joel out. She believed he'd understand eventually, that he'd see this was bigger than one girl. She didn't understand that Ellie had become everything to him. What followed was a massacre. Joel overpowered his guard and fought through the hospital with single-minded brutality. He killed every Firefly between him and Ellie. Soldiers who believed they were saving the world, doctors who were trying to cure humanity, guards who were just following orders. In the operating room, the surgeon blocked Joel's path, scalpel in hand, pleading for reason. Joel didn't hesitate. He shot him dead and lifted Ellie's unconscious body from the table. At the parking garage exit, Marlene made one final attempt to reason with him. "This isn't about me or even her. There is no other choice here." "You're right," Joel said, and shot her. He carried Ellie to a vehicle and drove away from humanity's potential salvation. When Ellie woke, confused and groggy, Joel lied. He told her there were dozens like her, that the Fireflies had stopped looking for a cure, that none of it had mattered. As they drove back to Jackson, the landscape rolled by in silence. Ellie stared out the window, processing Joel's story. Something didn't feel right, but she wanted to believe him. When they arrived at the settlement, Ellie stopped him before they entered. She told him about Riley, about being bitten, about waiting to turn, about her survivor's guilt that she was immune while everyone else died. "Swear to me," she said, looking him in the eyes. "Swear to me that everything you said about the Fireflies is true." Joel met her gaze without flinching. "I swear." Ellie studied his face for a long moment. She knew. On some level, she knew he was lying. But she also knew that pushing further would break something between them that couldn't be repaired. "Okay,"
she said quietly. They walked through Jackson's gates together. Joel had saved Ellie's life, but he'd stolen her choice. That lie would be a crack in the foundation of their relationship, a crack that would only grow wider. 4 years later, Ellie finally learned the truth. She returned to Salt Lake City and pieced together what really happened. The fury, betrayal, and anguish she felt drove a wedge between her and Joel. For 2 years, they barely spoke. On March 1, 2038, they began to reconcile. "I don't think I can ever forgive you for that," Ellie told him, "but I would like to try." The next day, a woman named Abby, daughter of the surgeon Joel killed, found him. She beat him to death with a golf club, while Ellie, captured and helpless, was forced to watch. Abby had every reason to want revenge. Joel had murdered her father and destroyed humanity's chance at a cure. From her perspective, she was justified. But Ellie saw only the man who'd saved her, taught her, loved her like a daughter. The cycle of vengeance spiraled outward, consuming everyone it touched. Ellie pursued Abby across the country, losing friends, loved ones, and pieces of herself along the way. When she finally caught up with Abby, she'd lost everything: Dina, her family, her connection to Joel. At the last moment, she let Abby go. Ellie returned to an empty farm, unable to play the guitar Joel had given her. She'd avoided her greatest fear, ending up alone, for years. Now it had come true. The cost of love in a brutal world was measured in grief. The cost of revenge was measured in souls. The Last of Us was never about zombies. It was about what we're willing to sacrifice for the people we love, and whether we can ever escape the consequences of those choices.